Alright everyone, my name's Jake Kaywell, and now it's time to talk about a subject near and dear to my heart and almost no one else's, the Studebaker V8. This story begins way back in the heady days of 1947. Studebaker had gotten fat off of the war. They had built the M29 Weasel, which was a very tough, very rugged, go-anywhere tracked vehicle, and they had also built the Wright Cyclone radial engine under license in truly astonishing numbers. As well as this, the 6x6 Studebaker truck that was supplied to the Russians in, again, truly astonishing numbers. Besides that, though, by this time in 1947, Studebaker had come out with the first all-new design of the entire industry. These were unlike anything else seen, and Studebaker was richly rewarded for it. By 1949, Studebaker was selling more than 300,000 units, the highest sales numbers ever, not to be repeated before nor since. It was during this time when Studebaker management thought about how they could stay competitive, and thus the idea for a V8 was introduced. Thus, in 1951, the first iteration of the Studebaker V8 was released to the world. It displaced 232 cubic inches, which really wasn't more than the prior senior level flathead straight six. Neither was the horsepower improved, but it was a fully modern overhead valve V8 design that was very much rugged and reliable. Now, something I should address. There are rumors that are circulating about how this iteration of the V8 was almost a direct copy of the similar overhead valve V8 that Cadillac introduced some 2 years prior. However, these are nothing more than unsubstantiated rumors and are almost entirely unrecognized by the Studebaker community at large. Anyway, by 1955, the displacement was further increased to 259, and then, a year later, the displacement was increased still to 289. This was really the most that Studebaker could get out of this particular engine, because the way in which they designed the block was so that future horsepower increases would be reliant upon increasing compression ratios as high as 14-1, and they hoped that the fuel industry would go along with it. However, unfortunately for them, octane ratings remained the same, and thus they were left with the small displacement bag. Not exactly an ideal situation when your competitors are making 300, 400, sometimes even 500 cubic inch engines. But it really didn't matter, because this engine, with an early type of Paxton centrifugal supercharger from 57 to 58 and later from 62 to 64, was able to still crank out some 3, 4, maybe even 500 horsepower in R3 trim, which was exceptional for the time. After the 1964 model year, the Studebaker foundry, like the rest of the factory, was completely shut down. But Studebaker still had to supply engines for their cars for the 1965 and 1966 model years. So, where to get engines? Studebaker turned to General Motors of Canada, who supplied them with Chevrolet 283 cubic inch V8s under the brand named McKinnon. Now, in my view, these engines were inferior to Studebaker's own line of V8s, but considering it was a stopgap measure to begin with, it is acceptable. As you can see here, it also displays a 283 cubic inch Thunderbolt sticker. So that's just a funny little detail Studebaker did. For the 1966 model year, the 283 was retained, but instead of the traditional yellow valve cover and black body color scheme, it was just all painted black. Very fitting for what would turn out to be the death of Studebaker automobiles. Now, something about the technical aspect of my own engine, the 289. In comparison to the Ford 289, which is nothing at all alike, it weighs some 700 pounds, whereas the Ford unit only weighs 450. In addition, the Studebaker unit uses a solid cam gear whereas the Ford unit uses a timing chain instead. Now, timing chains tend to not be nearly as reliable, and for that reason, that things can go faulty fast. So, because Studebaker simply couldn't afford the new technology, they almost by accident ended up with a truly reliable, truly remarkable engine. And that is actually what's in my car, the GT Hawk. You're going to go ahead and listen to a nice little blurble from it now. Listen to its rising crescendo and just marvel at this beautiful piece of technology from 50, 60 years ago. Bye bye now, and take care.